Hello everyone, my name is Ezra and we're going to talk about something interesting. Today I'd like to talk to you about the different communities that surround video games. There are many different types of communities within gaming, like communities of a specific gaming platform, or communities from individual games, and even communities that you may not even be aware that you are a part of. All of these different types of communities make up a large portion of the gaming community that I love being a part of. To start, let's talk about a couple of main platforms that the most people play their games on, like the Xbox, PlayStation, PC, and Nintendo devices. These platforms have their own dedicated following of people that outright refuse to play on anything except what they prefer. I'm sure that we all have heard the term console wars thrown around a couple times, or PC master race.
Ha 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 ha! Dirty console gaming peasants!
Regardless, they each have a following of players that interact with each other and communicate about the games that they're playing. If you own a specific platform, it's almost like you have a rite of passage to speak about it and be a part of the discussions about those types of platforms. On a smaller scale, handheld platforms like a Nintendo DS, PSP, Game Boy, and mobile games have their own communities as well. Platforms can unite a player base together, but also separate themselves from one another. Aside from digital games, are board games, card games, gambling games, arcade games, heck, I'll even throw in real-life sports in there too. These types of games revolve around their communities and would be less of a game without them. Vice versa, these communities can be so integrated into people's lives that it becomes ritualistic and an essential part of how they live. In fact, some games like Madden, FIFA, and 2K take stats, scores, and ratings from real-life sports players and integrate them into a digital video game. This brings me to my next point about specific communities. Have you ever spoken to anyone about a game that you've played before? Have you ever joined a public multiplayer lobby and coordinated with your team to win a competitive match? Have you ever trash-talked to the 12-year-old who claims to have had intimate relations with your mother? If you said yes to any of these, then congratulations. You are part of that game's community. But not all game communities are created equal. There can be really great and friendly communities that can increase the value of your game experience, and there can be extremely toxic communities that will leave you feeling like less of a human being. Most communities are seen in a positive light and are considered good and friendly, like Team Fortress 2, Dark Souls, Rocket League, and Smash Bros. The communities that surround these games are fun to interact with and add to the game's overall experience. You can get help with a level from a stranger, say GG after a good match is always enjoyable to see. And just having other people there to enjoy the game with you is a pleasant experience in itself. With that said, there are game communities that are so toxic and difficult to interact with that it can affect your gameplay and even make you quit playing altogether. League of Legends, Overwatch, Call of Duty, and FIFA, these games are all considered to have some of the worst gaming communities ever. It can make your playtime come to a screaming halt if you get tilted, you start playing differently, you're mad, things that you might not have expected to happen but are happening because a kid told you that you were trash. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the game in itself is bad. It just means that everyone that plays it thinks that they're better than you, which I guess can be understandable at times. If you are a dedicated player that has over 500 hours in a game, you shouldn't really be losing to a newbie that's never touched the game before. Which leads us to the next set of communities that I'd like to talk about. Hardcore gamers versus casual players. Spending hours upon hours playing a game and learning all of its intricate mechanics, lore, history, and getting to the point where you can call yourself good at a game can be very rewarding. But some people just like to play a game simply because it's fun. Both playstyles have distinct communities. On the hardcore side, you have the true players that know the game inside and out. They know every game mechanic, every choke point, every enemy spawn, every bomb location, and they play to win, or have put so many hours into the game that they are considered a source of knowledge about the game to other people. These people run in the higher echelon of gaming and are considered professionals. Speedrunners, esports teams, lore masters, these are all titles given to people that have an enormous amount of knowledge about the game or series. These titles can group them into communities of people that share similar goals and interests. On the opposite side, we have the casual players. People who play games just because they're fun to them. They may not be the most skilled or be a very high level or know a lot about the lore, but they still enjoy the game because it's nice to just relax and play a game for a bit. These players don't feel entitled to any sort of praise for their accomplishments. They don't care much for competitive gaming. They are simply there to play the game because they think it's fun. These people may not even realize that they are a part of the demographic for these games that they play, and there's nothing wrong with that. In between the hardcore communities and casual communities, we have a community that sort of melds the two together. Some casual players enjoy watching a professional player more than they enjoy playing themselves, or maybe even story-driven games that they may not have played themselves before but still enjoy watching other people play through it. Some people watch competitive esports without having ever played the game themselves. You may not even have to interact with people to be a part of a game community. Sometimes you just like to play the game. Maybe look up some cool tips and tricks to get better, or watch someone else play the game instead. Whichever way you prefer, you are a part of that game's community. So, in conclusion, what sort of gaming communities do you identify with? Are you proud to be part of that community, or do you prefer to stick to the gameplay?